welcome everybody. Thank you so much for spending your time with me this morning. I hope everybody's had a fantastic morning. Got a couple housekeeping things. I have Christian here to my right, and there's some other folks who are from Vercel. If you are looking for some support on stuff as we go through this, if you look for a white lanyard, that's a Vercel employee. Normally, I would say if someone's wearing all black, that's a Vercel employee, but I don't know. That's also another dead giveaway. So those two things combined, that's what's going to get us some support. And also, just shout out your questions as things come along. This is going to be really fun and interactive. Not really going to take ourselves too seriously here, but I think we'll be able to get through a lot of interesting information. It's going to help you guys along. Okay, so my name is Matt Jared. I am located in Austin, Texas, and I've worked at Vercel for 2.5 years. Before that, I was a developer at a small startup and at a really large public company, all focusing on the front end the entire time. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is when I'm looking for a fast site, or I'm looking something that's really, really performant, what are the things that I commonly see? At Vercel, my job is a sales engineer. So it's my job to bring everything that I've done throughout my career and help customers connect the dots, right? So how do I use Vercel? How do I use Next? How do I make the most of this? And I just kind of want to go over just some general things with you all that I see commonly for fast sites, okay? So we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of interesting things, and we're not going to be talking in slides. So goodbye to slides. We're done with these guys. First step for everybody, and here's where I think this is going to be the trickiest part, is if you all go to if you want to code along, feel free, pop open your laptops, pull out your phones, whatever it is. If you don't want to do that, I'm going to be doing all this alongside of us. So we're going to be doing some coding and things like that. There's going to be a recording to share later. So if you want to code along, please do so. If you don't worry about it. You'll get a lot out of this as well. Okay, so a-fast-site.vercel.app. So a fast site.vercel.app. You guys should be able to see this pretty well. And inside of here, there's a GitHub repo. So I would love for everybody, if you're coding along, go to this GitHub repo. I'm going to do a Command Shift here, and I'm going to go into this repo here. And if you hop into here and you click this fork button, this is going to give you your own version of this repository so we can code along and build stuff together and kind of see what's going on. Cool? Okay, go ahead and fork this. Once you have your own version of this repository, if you don't have a Vercel account already, hop into vercel.com/new, create a hobby account, create a pro account. If you have a work account already, maybe you can do this as well. And you'll see over here your fast site, like your version of this. And you go ahead and import this, okay? So while you guys are kind of running through this, let me repeat these steps really quick. A fast site.vercel.app with dashes between in fast or fast in fast site, and then go ahead and hop into the repo, clone the repo, and then deploy that into Vercel. And I've kind of done these steps, and while I talk here for a few minutes, if you have questions on this, Christian can help us. Anybody else in the crowd can help us. We're just going to get to a starting point. Okay. Now that we're through that, I want to tell you guys a story. And we're going to be going in and out of code and onto our site, onto our production site, and into Excalibur. So if anything, you wanted me to go back, just raise your hand and we'll go back and we'll talk about it. So we're going to time travel to Milan, Italy in 1336. And something really incredible happened in Milan. And it's actually kind of funny. Where I'm from, outside of Cincinnati, we actually pronounce this Milan. So we're going fancy today. We're going to Milan right now. And what we're going to talk about is this tower here. And what happened in 1336 was the very first ever clock tower was introduced, okay? What happened was they did not invent clocks. They did not invent towers. They just put the two together. They didn't invent time. They didn't do any crazy thing. The escapement, the thing that made the clock tick, was the very, very, very small thing that they changed. And then they put it up in a tower. And this is what changed everything, right? The idea is in Milan, they said, instead of saying, go meet me when the sun is at its highest point or at sundown, wherever, we're actually going to meet at 2 or 7 or whatever it might be. In this concept here that I want you guys to think about over the next couple of minutes while you're cloning and getting set up is we don't need to invent something new, right? We want to use the advancements that are around us and the advancements that have happened before us. So the invention is something that's new for my actual product. I don't need to invent a new framework or invent a new way to work on things. I'm going to use what's available to me, okay? So when we're thinking about a fast site and what that actually looks like and what we can actually do is let's go into our site here. So I have a fast site, and I'm actually going to pop into a code editor. So if you're just now cloning your repository, make sure you npm or pnpm or yarn install, get your code installed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pnpm run dev, and we are going to start coding. Okay, so you guys should see a version of this, and let me clean up some of these files so we can be very, very clear about what we're doing. All right, so I have my code running. If you have your code running, this is awesome. Let's go start in the layout.tsx. Let's just hang out here, and then let's go back to our local host. Localhost 3000, I've cloned my repository, I've deployed it to Vercel, I've got things working, and I'm looking at my local host. So a lot of times when we talk about performance, what we like to, I gotta walk. I can't just stand over here and say, I gotta cruise over here. So a lot of times when we're talking about performance, we oftentimes just chuck everything into Core Web Vitals, or we find web page tests and we just stare at things like just the tools, right? And we really, really obsess over getting a number, or getting to green, or getting to some data point that we really find to be super important. But I want to challenge everybody today to let's not just go and try and get to a number. Let's really dig deep and look at how our application is actually being rendered on the page. Okay, so by doing that, we're going to hop open into the DevTools. And what I did was Option Command I. So this is a little bit of a shortcut. You'll see me hop in and out, and this is how you can do the same. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at the network tab. We're going to look at just raw data. We're going to look at real numbers here. And the idea is what I want to do is I'm going to look right here. And when I'm looking at someone's site and I want to see if it's fast or if it's slow, the first things that I'm looking for are, do they have the fewest amount of things being passed down to end users? Is it just really, really, really small amount of stuff that gets sent to people? And the first thing that I can see here is in the site that I've built, it doesn't have this. And actually here, I skipped over this. Another thing that I wanted to talk about for this site is a few minutes ago, before we started, I actually decided that everyone in this room, we're going to start a startup. And this startup is this Explore Any City startup. And this is our application that we're going to build, and we need to make it faster. So I forgot that context, apologies. So we're going to make this site faster, and we're going to see what we can do. But the point still stands is I'm looking in here, Option Command I, and I'm looking at the network tab. So what I want to do when I'm looking at the network tab, again, like I said, I want as few things to be passed down to my end users as possible. I want just the most important things, which is my content. So what I'm looking at here, the very first thing that sticks out is I've got a bunch of random fonts that are getting jammed into here, right? This is just a bunch of stuff, and I'm using TTF files. I don't really know what this is or what this does. It looks like I'm going off to Google Fonts. Why is this here? And this is kind of the first challenge that I have for everybody is let's use whatever is given to us from the framework, okay? So our framework, Next.js, is going to give us all of these tools. It's going to allow us to make our site really fast and send a lot less down to our users. So let's look at the fonts as an example to kind of just get warmed up and get started here. So I'm looking at this here, and wow, in my head of the document, I'm going off to Google and saying, hey, Google static, bring me these fonts. Bring these fonts to me, and then I'm going to show the page, and then the page will hopefully not shift around a bunch when the fonts load in. So what Next.js does is it actually gives us the ability to do this really easily. So I'm actually just going to delete all of this. And if you're following along, go ahead and delete all that as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment here. And what you do to uncomment on the top here is you can actually do a command / and that will uncomment this. And literally what this is doing right here is saying, hey, Next, go grab these fonts in a really performant way. I don't really care about what kind of font it is. I don't really care what font it is. You can choose from a number of different things. So you can choose right here, Geist Mono is the official Vercel font that we use. It looks really great, and that's kind of blasted around everywhere. You can pick from any number of Google fonts already. You just don't need to go off and load a Google font independently and then bring it back down onto your page. Let's use the framework, okay? So we're going to clean this up. Let's change this here to actually instantiate this and actually make it work. I'm just going to go ahead and undo this. And this is my example if I'm using Roboto Mono, if you can go ahead and pick whatever font that you want to pick. But in our case, let's actually just delete this again. And let's actually just go to Geist. And Geist will be our font, okay? So what I'm going to do is comment this part out, and I'm just going to use Geist. Let's roll with the fonts, right? Going to go ahead and reload this. And now I can actually see inside of this tab here, I'm using a WAF2 file, and this is just my font, and it's been optimized to be delivered for my end users. Think about this asset for just once. Let's keep this asset in our mind for just a second. We'll get into how this actually gets delivered to our end users here in a second. Okay, let's dig in further. Can you guys see? I don't know if you guys can see this or not, so let's zoom in a little bit. This number, let's do this again. Let's pop this down and let's refresh. Okay, what's sticking out to me right now is this number down here. This is like some sort of Bitcoin casino or something. I have no idea what is happening. This is like absolutely crazy. 31.6 megabytes are transferred onto this page. What the heck is happening? What's going on? Okay, so like I said a second ago for our application here, we've actually gone in, our startup that we started a few minutes ago, I actually sold some ads on this. And I went to the Chicago Tourism Board and I said, hey, Chicago, I want you guys to send me, we're going to drive a bunch of traffic to the Chicago, the Chicago page for this startup that we made. So this Chicago page, they sent me these images. I have all of these images. They look great. Everybody from Chicago is going to be super happy. This startup is driving a ton of traffic to all these different pages. We're getting a lot of different information on this. Oh my gosh, they're going to love us. But there's a problem. That problem is this 32 megabytes of images that are being sent down, right? So where is this coming from? Why is this happening? So let's go ahead and dig in a little bit. Let's hop back over to your editor, go into your editor, and then we're going to go to our page.tsx, so our top level page. So our top level page is actually going to be our homepage. And our homepage is going to render a bunch of different things. It's going to do a lot of interesting stuff in there. And I have this interactive ad. I went and sold this ad and I said, hey, Chicago Tourism Board, we got to go get this. This is going to be amazing. And what they did was they sent me a bunch of imager links. And they said, it's on a CDN. It's delivered out into the world. It's great. Like, this is giving us everything that I possibly need is this amazing CDN. And the problem is that this CDN has not actually been connected to the next image component, excuse me. And the idea is, what we want to do is use the framework. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to, if you're following along, to line 193. And you can see here, actually, is this even the right one? Yes, it is. So there's multiple images on this page in this component, and I'm just literally going to change this IMG to be a capital IMG. And this is a component that's given to me for free from Next.js. And what this is going to do is it's going to optimize my images for me. So let's go back to why we're here. Every single time I'm looking at what a fast site should be, I see people who are using the framework over and over and over again, and they're using the framework as it's intended to be. So what I've done behind the scenes is I've said, okay, you can keep your images in Imager. They're optimized for a CDN, but the images themselves aren't optimized for my site. So what Next Font does is it actually gives us the ability to do this. So let's go ahead and give this a refresh. And we've gone down from 32 megabytes to 4 megabytes. And actually, let me reload this at the top of the page. And this is even a little bit lower. So you can see like what's 32 divided, or what's the percentage that's lower? That's like 80% lower that we're sending down to our users. So if we were in a subway earlier today on the earlier version of this, and I downloaded my site when I was in between stops and it was going, and my internet was really slow, and I tried to download 32 megabytes of images, it's going to be really, really slow. That's not a fast site, right? So here's the idea is we always want to send images down to our end users. And you can actually see here. So like we want to send images down to our end users that are going to be optimized and they're going to be in the right format, okay? And we don't have to send them all at the same time. We can lazy load them. This is a pretty simple concept, right? So like what I want to do is when I scroll in, you can see here on the network tab, these images are starting to load in. This is really kind of cool. So now, instead of saying, hey, download all of this like gigantic beach ball of images, we're just going to send like a tiny pebble down the hose, right? So every single time I see somebody who has a fast site, this real performance is they're only sending the assets that they need to send. Okay, this is really cool. What else? What other things inside of Next.js can we do and can we kind of like make really good? And how this gets deployed, I'm going to get to in here in a second, but here's our last thing that I want to go over. Let's go back up and into our page.tsx, our overall top level page. And if we go to, it's right here. It was actually right here. I skipped over it. This right here, I have my list of major cities. And what is this list of major cities? This is down here. This is the list of all of the cities that are inside of our little, kind of tourism blog thing that we've just created. It's a startup that you're all co-founders with me on, so hopefully we become really good at this. But the idea is these pages are all going to be dynamic pages, and we're going to go optimize these pages here in a second, and we're going to get into this. But the idea is, how can I make the future perceived performance be also just as good as our real performance gains? And there's another thing that Next.js is going to give us. I'm literally just going to change, like I think we've maybe written 10 characters so far. I'm going to change this A tag to a link tag. And I probably need to import this, or I already maybe imported it. And you guys can follow along. This is line 121 if you want to do that. All I'm going to do is change this to a link tag. And what I want to do next is I want to deploy this. I want to get this up and into Vercel so I'm done and I can actually go and see some of these gains. Okay, and then we're going to talk about how this gets deployed and what that looks like here in a second. Okay, I'm going to deploy this. Instead of doing git add, git commit, and git push and coming up with a commit message, I have this shortcut called go. If you've connected your Vercel and your git, you can go ahead and go do this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this go, and it's going to give me, for this, instead of coming up with commit message, I'm going to spend 20 minutes talking to you guys about this cool trick where I have a random NBA player as my commit message. So instead of thinking of a commit message, I'm going to explain to you that I don't want to write a commit message, and then now, well, all that time that I saved, I lost anyway. So this is fun. All right, so Wilbur Holland is our commit here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to Vercel. And since I already imported this project, I'm going to go to my Vercel project. Yours is going to look a little bit different. And you can actually see inside of Vercel, I have my whole application up and running. And when I just committed, you can actually see that I now have a preview environment for this. So now I can actually kind of come in here and test and figure out what's going on. And I can do a lot of interesting things around seeing how this is going to look for my end users. So we're going to come back to this in a quick second. But before we go on, I want to just kind of do a little quick recap of what we just did. So the line here is we're going to use the framework. Oh boy, I know that you can't see that. Let's make this darker. We're going to use the framework. Okay. So things that we did were we optimized fonts, super simple. We changed images, and we did something with the link thing. And like, I'll tell you about this, and this will be a little bit more clear here in just a second. And the idea is at Vercel, why it's so important to do these things is because when we take the framework, when we deploy your application for you at Vercel, what we're going to do is we're going to take your code. And we don't want that to be red. Let's make this black. Let's make this real easy. I'm going to take my code, everything that we just worked on. And what Vercel is going to do is we're going to take a look at this. And what we're going to do, we're going to deploy this off into Vercel. Let's put another box up. This is going off into Vercel, and this is going out into the world. But what we're going to do when we do this, let's make our box green. This arrow right here, a lot of times this arrow, we spend a ton of time optimizing and perfecting things and thinking about how our images are going to work and trying to outsmart ourselves. And here's where the idea is, instead of thinking here, like across everything. So instead of saying like, I'm going to think about everything across both sides, and I'm going to spend a bunch of time thinking about my infra, what we want you to do, and like the idea here, is that we're going to have folks think way less around the infra piece, and we just want to think about code, right? We don't want to reinvent the clock tower. We just want to invent the escapement that makes it possible for us to make a clock tower, right? We don't need to rewrite everything. And the idea is, inside of our code, let's just use what's given to us. Let's focus on like what our end users really, really want. And this is oftentimes the pattern that I see. Okay, amazing. We're through the first part, and the headline here is use the framework. We just deployed a bunch of things off to Vercel, and I want to talk about what we just deployed. But before we do that, I got to tell you a quick story. There's going to be lots more stories, so hang tight. We're almost there. I want to talk to you guys about Boeing in 1952. What happened with Boeing in 1952 was they changed one thing about their plane and really transformed the entire industry and transformed how we all operate today. And that one thing wasn't, we're going to build a new plane. We're going to change how people deploy with put their wings on. They changed from propellers to jet engines. Every single thing about how we all got here on planes today is really pretty much the same. We all sit in a metal tube. They've kind of perfected the metal tube. But when things changed from hopping from place to place to jetting from place to place, was changing from a propeller to a jet engine. Now I understand a propeller to a jet engine is like a really big engineering feat, but the concept still remains where if we have a propeller and then we send up a jet engine, we have a lot more that's possible for us. Okay, and I want you to kind of like think about this based on what we just deployed. So you can see here our fast-site.vercel.app is deployed. Now let's hop in here and let's see if this is actually any good. You can see we have 3 megabytes transferred. I can scroll down and I actually have done a pretty good job. There's some things that I've left in with like a CSS file that I can improve, but then there's a bunch of this stuff that's flying in. What's just happened here? Let's do this again. Let's retread on this. What happened here? Okay, let's clean this up. Let's run again. It's getting a little bit faster here. I can see my images are all now going to start to load in. And these are images that are optimized and they load in later, but this really kind of weird thing just happened. What is going on? I scroll in and a bunch of other things start loading in. Remember that link tag that we just put on? What's happening is this link tag is actually prefetching our next pages. And it's saying, hey, when you go and click into Berlin, I actually want to have a lot of this information ready for you. I want to have that perceived performance be really, really fast. So the idea is we're going to use Vercel to optimize on those things. So we're going to use our assets in what we're doing for our prefetching to also be really optimized. And what happens is, where we see a lot of people get into trouble, is if we go here to our application, and I say, fast site.vercel.app, how this gets deployed is over here. Somebody's going to request this site, and it's going to get sent over to Vercel. And we're in like the drawing squares on the screen portion of the page. So if you can't see what I'm drawing up here, feel free to shout me out and I will clean it up for you. So fast site.vercel.app gets requested. And then we're going to have my Vercel here. And Vercel deploys this out into the world for me, right? So this is available for everyone. Let's actually flip this. Let's make this green. Let's make this blue. Somebody went to my site. Vercel is going to respond with this, okay? But Vercel is not just going to respond with a site. Vercel is going to make it possible for me to prefetch my next site. Vercel is going to make it possible for my fonts to be optimized. So when Next.js says, hey, the font should be like composed like this, it should do these things, what's going to do is going to actually be deployed around the world in a very optimized way. So folks who use Vercel oftentimes have that jet engine. So instead of having a propeller and kind of building things on our own, let's use this jet engine and have our site go really, really fast. So what does this jet engine actually do? Let's look into this. Let's dig in just a little bit further. So Vercel is going to have like a lot of different things that are going to be a part of it, right? And a lot of different things that we're going to do. So we're up here and we're going to go across. The first thing that Vercel is going to do inside of here is we're going to have our firewall. Let's just make this green. So here's our firewall. This is the first line of defense where a request is going to come in and we're going to see our firewall. We can block requests if we want. We can allow requests, all these interesting things. And then we have our edge network. And then inside of our edge network, and if you're interested in the firewall, we have a great talk later today with Malavika. I think it's a workshop. I'm not sure. It is a workshop. Yeah, and it's going to be in here. And that's later today. So then we have our edge network. What is an edge network? This is literally what makes everything possible for our assets to be cached really fast. So these are deployed globally. So this is where our assets are cached. So things like images, fonts, our JavaScript bundle, this actually gets deployed everywhere. So here's where we're going to have this deployed automatically into regions. So I have US East, I have Europe 1, Australia 1, whatever it might be. And this is all done for me. I don't have to manage any of this. And all of these go ahead and sit here. And then we also have behind the scenes, here's where like fluid compute sits. So if you're thinking of making an AI agent or doing something like that, or you're thinking of making a really fast marketing site or really fast e-commerce site, you're going to have all of this by default. And where we see people get into trouble is we look at this and people say like, oh, hey, I'm gonna outsmart you Vercel guys. I'm going to put something in front. This is really where I'm going to like make it awesome is instead of everybody just going to here, I'm going to put some other thing in front and I'm going to save, whatever it is. I'm going to make it really fast or whatever it might be. And the idea is this is actually where folks get into trouble because in here, you think that you're going to have this ability to sort of just like reduce the number of requests that come through. But what we actually see is that this cache right here that you would maybe put in front of folks is really where things get really squirrely, and it's not actually clear where your assets are coming from. And there's lots of collisions on things. So if you want to go and prefetch your next links and prefetch your next pages, that's an asset that's cached, that logic that does that. If you try and use another service that doesn't know the framework and isn't deploying based on your code in the framework, things get really squirrely. So instead of my users coming through and having like this amazing experience, what happens is users actually have a lot more bounces to other places. And when we have this experience over here where users are going to some other thing and then into Vercel, this is where folks get into trouble. This is not going to be a fast site if I try and jam another CDN in front of this. Okay, so really when I look at fast sites, I pretty much know that if you're using just Vercel, it's going to already have a leg up on everybody else. And I have some examples of this. Let's see if I can go down here. This is from Elkyop. They have, they have a couple guys here. Daniel is having a workshop later today in this room talking about building his e-commerce site. And this is what Elkyop did. So Elkyop took out whatever was in front of Vercel and is just using Vercel for this exact same dance that we're all kind of doing for their images, for their JavaScript bundle, and all these different things. And their time to first byte, which is a huge indicator on how Core Web Vitals are going to perform and how your site's going to perform, all shifted dramatically into the green. Where before they were like, okay, this is like maybe 80% of the way here. Now we're going to go to 98, 99% of the way there. So let's use our assets and use the framework to the best of our abilities, right? Okay, so we've seen our site. Our homepage is looking really good. Any thoughts or questions? I think we're on time. Everybody feeling good? Should we stop? Should we change? Should we do something else? We have 13 minutes. I could talk to you about the Indiana Pacers for the next 13 minutes if you want. I swear I will have lots of great takes. Okay. All right. Let's finish up here. I promise we're going to land the ship and it's going to be really good. And we have an amazing rest of the day for you guys. If you're interested in some of the assets things and some of the Next.js things that I just kind of went over, Akash from Ramp was, if you haven't built your site yet or you're kind of thinking about using Vercel, Akash from Ramp was actually in the same room as us last year talking about the same stuff. And he today is giving a talk about his Next.js migration. So if you want to see kind of some of this stuff in real life, Akash is giving a talk later today at 1:15 on the main stage. It's going to be awesome. And he's going to talk about this exact same migration that they took. And if you go to ramp.com, it's pretty fast. It's pretty good. It hits a lot of the check marks that I'm looking for. Okay. The very last thing that we're going to go over is going to be probably the most intense. And we were talking earlier about like, how do I make my site fast if like queries are really slow or there's a bunch of stuff that's out of my control? Okay, so you guys have seen this amazing startup that we ran. This first page here is pretty static. There's not a lot of dynamic data, but if you go to the next page, if you click on this random city, what you can see here is I'm able to go and grab any random city that I want. Let's see, this is Baltimore. Christian will like this. We're not doing that. We're going for Cincinnati today. Actually, you know what? Let's go for New York. Or I don't know. What do you guys think? Who has a city that they want to kind of dive into here? New York. This is cool. Anybody have anything that they want to talk about? Austin, Texas. That's where I'm from. Let's do this. Austin, Texas. The reason why I'm showing you guys this and doing this is every single page that I've just shown you has all of the same data structure. We have this top part that's going to show us the Wikipedia for the city. And remember, we started this company where we want to have people learn more about traveling to different places. This top part is going to be like a Wikipedia entry, right? The bottom part is going to be the weather. And then the very, very, very bottom part below that is going to be where the International Space Station is in relation to those things. And the reason why I chose this data was because it's free and open and it's kind of easy for anybody to kind of pick into this. So we can make the data more complex another time if you want. But the idea is every single time, if I were to go back to Cincinnati, I have to load this data every single time, right? The whole page is loading all of the data for the whole page. It's pretty fast, but there's some things that we can do to make this really, really screaming fast. So if I go from Cincinnati to Austin, and I go to Austin, Texas, do you see how I have to sit and wait and load stuff? So let's dig into the technical side of this really quick. But before I do that, let's actually pause. Talked a little bit about like what we're going to do. I have one more story. I know I can hear some groans back there. We have one more last story that we're going to tell. And this last story is going to be about a story that you probably have all heard. It's about Billy Beane in Moneyball. This year is actually wrong. I was debating if I was going to put 1997 or 2002. 97 is when the guy started, but 2002 is when the book was written. So I figured 2002 was a safe bet. But if you haven't heard the story, this is about a guy named Billy Beane, and he became the general manager of the Oakland A's. And what he said was, we are no longer going to do guessing. We're only going to use hard data, right? And the hard data that we're going to use is going to be how fast someone throws, how fast they run from base to base, what their on-base percentage is. And this actually really kind of reminded me of what William the Conqueror also did. So I'm getting in my history bag today. So William the Conqueror is not from England. He's from Normandy, which was another country. He went and conquered England. He didn't even speak the language. He didn't know anything about England. He just conquered it because there was an opportunity to conquer, I guess. I don't know. And what he said was the exact same thing Billy Beane said was, only give me the exact data that I need right now to make my decision. So the same is true we were talking earlier about if I have a query or I have a page that's dynamic and I'm requesting that page and I'm requesting all of the data and I'm requesting that dynamically every single time, I'm kind of acting like a scout in the 90s. And what the scouts would used to do is they would go fly around to the country and they would just watch people play and say, thumbs up, thumbs down. They've got a real feel for the game. And the same is true for William the Conqueror. Is like people would come to court and they would tell him how great they are and how wonderful they are. And he's like, well, no, how many castles do you have? How much farming can you do in a year? Who are the people that you have there? And the point I'm trying to make here is that we want to go from like generalizations and broad content to like only the data that I need, right? And this happens a lot in our world in web development, is where we get kind of stuck in the same conversation. And on the far right, we look at static. Let me actually make this a little bit bigger. And we look at the idea where it's like, I'm only going to make static pages. I'm only going to do non-dynamic stuff where I'm only going to send content that I want. And the reason why I'm going to do this is because it's going to be fast. But the cost of this is that my UX will be bad because it won't be personalized. Fast, not personalized. Okay. And on the other side of that, I'm going to have the same conversation is I want it to be dynamic. Got to have this site to be dynamic. I love William the Conqueror. I got to have this thing to be super dynamic. I want only the data that I want, but I can't do that because it's going to be personalized, but it's actually going to be super slow. Personalized and slow. So we have to make this choice. Are we going to be William the Conqueror and write the Doomsday Book? Or are we going to be just like kind of hoping that we have the right thing? And we have these two decisions and this road to choose down, path to choose. And the idea is when folks choose one or the other, they might have a much faster site where it's just pre-built content. It's content that was already written. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to move forward. Or folks might say, hey, I'm going to have this like highly dynamic. And we have a highly dynamic page on our hands. So should we like just say it's going to be really personalized, but it's going to be slow? Or should we say I'm going to hope that I have the right content. I'm going to pre-build it. And if you have a bunch of queries that are going to be really dynamic, well, it's just going to be slow. Sorry. But I'm here to say that this is kind of like a little bit of, there's some flawed logic in here because what we do at Vercel is we kind of have the ability to do both. So let's go figure this out. How can we do this? So I kept going and showing you guys what happens with our data here. Is every single time, everything loads. So this is going to be kind of like a dynamic SSR page, like server-side rendered page. So what we're going to do is let's hop back into our editor. This is going to be our last little round of code that we're going to write. And then you guys are free of me for a bit. And then we're going to go to this page right here. We're going to go to experience and then this dynamic page topic, and then you're going to go into page. And what we're looking at here is I am loading all of my data, right? Every single time I'm going and loading every single piece of data. And I'm saying, hey, go to Wikipedia for this city and bring down like the top Wikipedia article. Go to find where the ISS is in relation to this city and bring that down too. And also the weather, we need to really also kind of know how that's going to work as well and pull that down. And the idea is we don't need to say everything is in one bucket. So we were talking about queries earlier. If you're running like a SaaS application, you say, hey, I want to have these enormous queries and the site's going to be slow because it's dynamic. Or you can say like, well, my site can't be dynamic because it's static. And what we're going to do to change that is we're actually just going to go ahead and just like wipe all of this away because this is too broad. This is not giving us only the exact data that I want right now. And what I'm going to do is, and this is like, I'm going to go grab this city here. So if you're following along with code, line 31 to 36 in the page.tsx inside of experience. I'm going to go ahead and comment that out, and I'm going to comment in some data to where we figure out what city what we're looking at. And then these components that I'm importing, let's go ahead and rip these guys out too. And then what we're going to use is we're going to stream in this data. Okay. And what I'm going to do is just doing a little bit of commenting dance here, getting rid of this stuff. And we're just kind of, it's all the same data. It's all the same structure. But instead of pulling these components in where the whole page is being loaded, I'm going to go section by section. And not only am I going to go section by section, see, I'm going to uncomment this. When I go section by section, I actually have a lot more control over how everything's going to work. So you can see this is still loading. Oh, this is my production. I'm right. I'm crazy. I need to go to my local so you actually can see what's going on. Let's go to New York. So when I refresh this over and over and over again, you see I'm actually not going off to Wikipedia and back. There's actually no refresh happening here. So let's go back to our example here. And this is the difference between this is where fast sites really shine. Let's look at our production site. I'm refreshing this. My whole page is loading. Now on my local version, just the Wikipedia article is pretty much static, even though my first load was dynamic. And then I have a bunch of data that's loading in down here. And then I have a bunch of data that's loading in down here. So here's where I have really, really, really tight control on when data comes in and when data goes out and things like that. So here's the idea is like, if I have a query that's super, super slow, but I only need to run it once and I get like the user's name, I'm going to run that once and then I'm going to cache that for a really long time. So here's the idea. I say caching a lot. Automatically, there's static asset caching for like images and fonts and stuff like that. But how can I actually cache dynamic data? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our server actions. So I'm going to go to actions.tsx. And this is right in here for our Wikipedia entry. This basically goes to Wikipedia and it runs and goes and gets, like the general Wikipedia information for us. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment this piece here. So if you go to actions.tsx, if you're following along, we're going to uncomment this. Whoa, I went too far. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, you gave me this information about New York or Austin or whatever city you want to put in. And it's all I'm ever going to need because that's never going to change. Like the latitude and longitude of New York is never going to change, right? So I'm just going to store this for 30 days. And then the next time I actually want to change it is maybe I want to change this to be a lower number. And then I can actually kind of get really, really granular about all these different things. So let's hop over here. Let's go back. And you can see this is going to be cached forever. The same concept is for my weather data. Weather data doesn't necessarily need to be cached forever, but it definitely shouldn't be dynamic, right? There's somewhere in between here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out somewhere that works for me. So let's go down to get weather data. So how about 30 minutes? And all I'm doing is inside of this function, this is a server function or a server action, excuse me. What it does is it says, hey, go to this database. It can be go to this API. It can be my API locally. In this case, I'm using public API, so we can all kind of have example data to work with. And I'm going to say, just keep it for 30 minutes. If I come back 31 minutes from now, go run this again. Right? So this is the difference between fast and slow is that we're actually going to use the most of our streaming platform. We're going to stream data in here. So you can actually see that we're kind of starting to come in and it's going to be really, really a lot faster. Okay. Last thing I want to land you guys with, there's a lot that we've covered. We talked about a bunch of different things. I know there's a huge day ahead of us. Some talks that I think you guys would find interesting in this. I mentioned Akash. If you're interested in streaming data in and caching that and what that looks like, Luba, I forget what time it is she's having a talk around ISR and this concept of I really only want dynamic data at this point, but I want static data at a totally different point. And how do I manage that deeply? So we keep going back to queries. Like I have this really intense query, but maybe only 20% of it needs to be dynamic every time. Let's cache the other 80%. How do I get really, really specific on this? And when do I change it? In this case, we just did it on time. And I'll let you guys go here in just a second. I'm going to land the ship. So when we're thinking about this, what did we do? And let's make this really big. So we really crushed it on the framework. Like we used the framework. We did everything that the framework gives us. It gives us images, it gives us fonts, it gives us link things. The next side of that is we cached our assets really, really well. And we used Vercel for that. The last part of this is that we streamed data in. And then the other part of this is that we had an amazing tool behind the scenes. And this is Vercel. So if you're thinking about like, hey, what does my site look like if it's fast? I want you guys to think of this here. Frameworks, assets, streaming, and tools, right? So here, oh, I spelled Vercel wrong. Oh my God. This will be my last talk. Just kidding. Okay. If you have questions, find somebody with a a white lanyard on. Make fast sites. This isn't something that we should think about later. This is something we can build together right away. I hope you found this interesting, and go have a great day and talk to us and I don't know, let's learn stuff together and build great stuff. Thank you guys so much for your time.